Happy Monday out there, everyone. I hope you've had a great weekend and you're excited for this wonderful day. I'm super excited to be here with you and get into the topic this week of expressing your feelings. I'm going to talk to you about how I learned to express my feelings and how I learned that it's not good to hold your feelings in. And I want to share that with you because I think it's a really important lesson. So thanks for being here. This is going to be a really cool episode. So welcome back to the Aha Moments, where every day I share the lessons I've learned in my work as a psychotherapist and in my life to inspire you to live your very best life. I'm your host, Elliott Connie, and let's talk about emotions and how we learn to express them. I can remember being a young kid and learning that it's not good to express emotions as a boy. I lived on a street called East Central Street, but the street that my neighborhood was on was called Ruggles Street. Ruggles Street had a bunch of kids my age, like really close friends of mine, a guy named Jason and a guy named Shane, a guy named Brent. These were people in my neighborhood, and there was girls in the neighborhood that were also about our age, Nancy and Susan, and they had bikes. Nancy and Susan had bikes, and I was walking around the neighborhood and I saw Nancy and Susan, and I don't know, probably 10 years old I would say at that time, and Nancy and Susan riding around bikes, and I didn't have a bike, and I was so jealous and so interested in these two girls that had bikes, and they were really kind and really nice, and they said, "Would you like to ride bikes with us?" And I said, "Sure," and they shared their bikes with me. And because their bikes were pink and lavender, they were girl bikes, so I was riding around girl bikes, just having fun with these other 10-year-old girls, 11-year-old girls, whatever age we were. Boys saw me riding these pink, purple bikes that were obviously girl bikes, and they started making fun of me. They started picking on me, which I didn't understand. I was too young really to understand there's a difference between a girl bike and a boy bike, and boys aren't supposed to ride girl bikes, blah, blah, blah. So they're picking on me and calling me names for riding a girl bike, and I'm really upset by this. I'm, little 11-year-old, 10-year-old Elliott is emotional about this. And I went home where my father told me to stop crying. My father told me to stop crying, and these things can't bother you. You have to toughen up and be a man and hold it in and not let it out. And even as a young person, I think that didn't sit well with me. If I'm upset, I should be able to verbalize and express that I'm upset. I should be able to communicate openly about my emotions and what I'm feeling. And at the time, I was experiencing extreme frustration. I did not understand why these people were making fun of me when all I was doing was riding bikes. And who wouldn't want to ride bikes? Regardless of the color. Who cares if it's purple or pink or lavender or whatever? It's just a bike, and I'm just a young kid that wants to have fun riding a bike. And I couldn't for the life of me understand why anybody would make fun of me for it. As I've gone on to become a psychotherapist, I think learning how to communicate our emotions effectively, learning how to not hold them in, is an incredibly powerful tool, because when we hold our emotions in, it's actually toxic to our bodies. We actually don't want to do it. We have to be able to effectively approach people and be able to communicate to you, here's what I'm feeling, here's why I'm feeling it. In some cases, here's what you've done to cause me to feel this way. We have to be able to express ourselves in that way. It's a beautiful thing, and it's also a healthy thing. It keeps our lives in balance. It keeps our lives in check. What I wish I had been told as a young boy is to say, it's okay to be sad. It's okay to be upset. It's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to be confused. And it's okay to cry if it makes you cry. It's okay to scream if it makes you scream. It's okay to let it out however it needs to come out, because I don't want you holding it in. I've had to learn that as an adult. And now I'm an adult that's perfectly capable of telling people, here's how I'm feeling. Here's why I'm feeling that way. And here's what you may have done to contribute to my feelings. It helps me, and it helps me stay balanced. It helps me stay healthy. It helps me not hold stuff in and do that toxic thing that happens to our bodies when we hold things in. If you hold things in, eventually it comes out in inappropriate ways, and it comes out in harmful ways to people that you did not intend to harm. So we have to become capable. We have to become fluent. We have to become able to be able to express these emotions in really, really healthy ways. And that is the lesson I want you to take away from this, is not holding your emotions in. To be on a journey of being able to express to people when your feelings are hurt, when you're sad, when you're frustrated, when you're angry. Because when you're able to do that, life gets really, really well. So I want you to think about your life. What messages did you learn about expressing emotions, be it good or be it bad? Or what lessons did you learn as a child that you kind of struggle with and work with that you carry with you to this day? Thanks again so much for being here, everybody. Please keep sharing this podcast on your social media platforms or with at least one person in your life that you think could benefit from hearing this message today. And do not forget to subscribe. So wherever you're listening, Apple Podcasts, Simplecast, Spotify, wherever, hit that subscribe button so you get a notification each time we drop a new episode, and I cannot wait to see you tomorrow. And also, you can support this podcast on Patreon, and there are extra bonuses for the people who subscribe to Patreon. So head on over to Patreon and support my podcast. It's no secret that expressing emotions can be difficult. I mean, that's why we're focusing on that in this week of our podcast. But there are also society things that make it that way. There are messages we get from the media that cause us to struggle to express our emotions. And today we're going to get into that and talk about how to overcome those things and become someone that is comfortable expressing their emotions. So welcome back to the Aha Moments, where every day I share the lessons I've learned in my work as a psychotherapist and in my life to inspire you to live your very best life. I'm your host, Elliott Connie, and this is really important, so please follow with me here. I gotta use an example to show you the way that we get these messages that it is not okay to share your emotions and how that trips us up throughout life. But when I was a child, I had a crush on a girl. I've talked about this girl before. Her name was Donna. She was my middle school girlfriend and high school crush, if you will. But in middle school, when we broke up, I think it was like 7th, 8th grade, 8th grade probably, she broke up with me and it really hurt. Like it really, really crushed me. And I was at an age, 12 years old, where you don't even know that you're not supposed to talk about those things. So I would talk to my friends about how brokenhearted I was about the situation with Donna, and they laughed at me. They made fun of me. They called me names about not being masculine and not being a man, even at 12 years old. I remember going and approaching older boys and being told that, like, you're a man, you're supposed to go on to the next girl, and there's plenty of girls out here. And you get these messages that if I talk about my emotions and my feelings, I'm going to be ridiculed, criticized, made fun of, talked down to. And that message lingers and that message sticks to the point where we're no longer comfortable sharing how we feel. And I think that's really important because then I go into adulthood, fast forward life, almost a decade, and I've got my very first really serious adult relationship, my college sweetheart, a woman named Erin. So at the time, just to tell you guys a little quick story, I was in college in Massachusetts and lots of things were going on in my life at the time, and I had decided I was going to transfer to a school in Texas and she was going to stay in Massachusetts, and we really wanted to create a life. But the problem was I was not honest about my emotions, and I was not honest about being afraid to lose her, and I was not honest with myself about how I felt through that transition. As a consequence, I was not honest with her. And the relationship fell apart. I mean, she lived her life, I lived my life. And that's fine. I'm not in any way saying, like, I wish I had ended up with her or my life's been so terrible, I want to be with her or anything. But I'm saying there was a point there where it's like, I wish I'd been more honest with myself and thus more honest with her. We've recently seen each other on Facebook. I totally, you wonder, like, what would have happened had I not carried that message from my childhood into my adulthood. My life would have ended up very, very different. And that, it might be a bad thing because I like the way my life has ended up. But, the biggest thing that people struggle with as they age is regret. That's the biggest thing. I've had to learn throughout the years that being comfortable expressing my emotions, be they good or bad, be they romantic or not, be they sensitive or not, the best thing you can do is express your emotions. And if other people have a difficult time with that, so be it. But one of the most crucial ingredients to being your genuine, authentic self is to be real about what it is you are feeling. Be real with yourself and being real with the people around you. And it's hard because boys are literally taught don't cry, right? And it's not okay to hold in our emotions because we're holding in our genuine, authentic selves. So overcome those messages we get from society and Ignore those messages we get from movies and TV shows. All human emotions are appropriate. So thus, all communication about the human emotions are appropriate. So we need to be able to share them. Now, I told you some things that affected me in my life, but I want you to think about what you experienced as your early years, which were the messages you got about whether or not it was appropriate or inappropriate to express your emotions. Thank you so much for being here today. Please keep sharing this podcast on social media and with at least one person in your life that you think could benefit from hearing this message. And don't forget to subscribe. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Simplecast, Spotify, wherever it is you like to listen to your podcast. And also don't forget to support this podcast on Patreon. There are some extra bonuses for being on Patreon, and I would really appreciate your support there. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Learning to express my emotions is one of the things that I'm most proud of, and it's also one of the biggest contributors to me having a success in business and happiness in my life. And today I'm going to tell you exactly why. So I want to welcome you back to the aha moments, where every day I share the lessons I've learned in my work as a psychotherapist and in my life to inspire you to live your very best life. Of course, I'm your host, Elliott Connie, and today I'm going to share a really hard story, actually. And I'm going to talk about something that I'm ashamed of, or was ashamed of. Like I said, learning to express my emotions has really changed my life and led to levels of success and levels of happiness and joy that I would not have achieved otherwise. So let me tell you a story. And actually, before I even tell you the story, let me tell you kind of the game-changing thing, is without being able to express your emotions and to express your feelings, you can't defend yourself, right? Because in the defense of yourself, and I mean like appropriately defending yourself, you must be able to stand up against something that is wrong and share how you've experienced it as wrong. And I'm going to tell you a time where I did not stand up for myself. I did not express how something made me feel. And to this day, I regret that I did not stand up for myself. No, I'm going to tell you exactly what happened, why I'm okay with it now, like some things have transpired. But so I sat on a professional board. In the academic field as a whole, and certainly in the field of the type of therapy I do, which is known as solution-focused brief therapy, there has historically been a race issue where this is a heavily white, male-dominated field. So 15 years ago, when this black guy from urban America shows up and starts writing books and making videos and sharing content on social media, there were some people that were really, really upset. I ended up creating an organization. I was on a team of people that created an organization, and we were on a board. And during one of the board meetings, there were some people on this board that were just not happy with who Elliott Connie is and what Elliott Connie represents. And during a board meeting, someone made a small joke about another organization. One of the people that is super anti-Elliott was offended by this joke, got mad at me for the joke, even though I was not the person that told it. They got upset with me about this joke. The next time I talked to this person, I asked why were they mad at me, and their response was, because I believe the person who told the joke told it for your benefit. And I was so hurt. Now you're holding me responsible for things other people say? This is crazy. This is nuts. And I did not stand up for myself. I didn't tell that woman how wrong I think she was. I did not tell that woman how hurt I was by that experience. I did not hold that woman accountable to needing to be and do different. For years, I regretted it. That happened in probably 2015 or 16 maybe. And for years, I regretted it. I really struggled with, that was a moment to hold this person accountable and let them know, you can't treat me that way. You are clearly biased. I don't believe you would be biased against me if I were white. What you've done is wrong. And I didn't say those things. I just said nothing. Now, over the years, the field has changed significantly. I have grown in status in this field, and without question, the largest voice in the field of solution-focused brief therapy. This person resigned from that board eventually. That organization disbanded. I created my organization, which is the largest training organization in the field, and that person has kind of disappeared a bit, and they're not really around so much anymore. And I still wish that I had spoken up and said something, but I'm glad that the field has shifted and become more diverse as a consequence of my leadership and my voice. But I share this with you to say, unless you can master the art of sharing your feelings, you can't defend yourself when something wrong has happened. And that's a skill that you're going to need out in this world because you are your own advocate. And I want you guys to be your own advocate and do things that move you towards success. So if you don't speak up, you're going to miss opportunities. You're going to miss chances. You're going to experience harm and regret. And I don't want you guys to have those things. So just think about that for a moment. Think about how important it is to learn to use your voice and express your feelings and emotions, because you cannot stand up for yourself without that. So thank you for being here today and listening to me. That's not actually an easy thing to talk about. It was a very difficult time in my life. I've had a lot of difficult times in my life and career as a result of the racial issues I have endured from being one of the few black males in this field. So thank you for listening. Please share this podcast on your social media platforms or with at least one person in your life that could be inspired by hearing this story. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast. You can do that wherever you listen to your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Simplecast, Spotify, wherever. And also, please support me on Patreon. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you once again, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. So what in the world does expressing your feelings have to do with making your relationship stronger and better? In fact, almost making your relationship indestructible. Well, that's what we're going to get in today here on the podcast. So welcome back to Aha Moments, where every day I share the lessons I've learned in my work as a psychotherapist and in my life to inspire you to live your very best life. Of course, I'm Elliott Connie. I'm the host of this podcast. And as we talk about the importance of expressing your feelings, I think about my work in working with couples over the years. So I want to talk to you about a couple that I saw years and years ago. So this was a woman. Well, it was a couple. And the woman in the couple had been abused as a child and had gone through lots and lots of things. And then in her adulthood, she married an abusive narcissist. Through lots of really hard things, she eventually leaves the narcissist and finds herself in a relationship with a really remarkable guy. Not perfect, but remarkable guy. They're in therapy to rebuild their relationship. They've gone through some troubles and some difficulties, and they wanted to repair those difficulties. They argued a lot, and they would have told you, if you'd asked them on the first day, they would have told you that the problem they had was fighting and arguing. They would have said, we fight and argue a lot. But actually what the issue was one of the partners, the woman, was not sharing her emotions. So here's what would happen. She had been through so much with this narcissist. And narcissism is a really funny thing because the people who are in a relationship with a narcissist always feel abused, because the people who are in a relationship with a narcissist, they always feel abused, taken advantage of, and they always have trust issues. So as a consequence, this woman, she didn't trust her new partner because the previous partner had used information against her in a way that only a narcissist would. So literally, little tiny things like when I come home from work, I ask her, how was your day? She doesn't even engage in that conversation because she says she doesn't want to talk about herself. But the truth is, it's because I didn't trust that if I talk about myself in an intimate, vulnerable, exposing myself way, you will use that information against me. The problem wasn't arguing or we don't get along and we fight too much or we have communication issues. None of those were the actual problem. The actual problem was I had to learn how to trust my partner enough that I could express my feelings towards them. Because here's the thing. There are two really important things I want you to get from this. The first one is I cannot be connected to someone I don't trust. And in a relationship, if there is no trust, there is no connection. And then we can't grow together, build together, love one another. We can't have intimacy. The relationship can't flourish. And the second thing is, unless I engage with you about what my feelings are, then you don't know how to meet my demands. You don't know how to meet my needs. You don't know how to partner me. So I have to be able to tell you, here's how my day was, and here's what made me happy. Here's what didn't make me happy. Here's what brought me joy, and here's what made me sad. And then your partner gets to say, I want to contribute to your life. I can only contribute to your life if you invite me into it. Because that's really what expressing feelings is about. And sometimes expressing feelings, it's positive. And those of you who know me know that I am all in on expressing my feelings to people. I almost to the point I want to make it awkward. I want all the people around me to know I adore them, I cherish them, I value them, I respect them. They mean something to me and always will, always do. But it also means sometimes having hard conversations. It also means sometimes I have to pull you aside and say, I'm not thrilled with the thing you just did and or said. Sometimes I have to pull you aside and say, the thing you just did and or said, I'm not super happy with. And that allows the relationship to grow because we've joined. And we can only join when we're being vulnerable. And listen, it's scary. There's no way around that. There's no doubt about that. But the only way to a strong relationship is through sharing your feelings with one another. So honestly, my call to action today is just that. I want you to share your feelings with your partner, the good ones. Make your partner feel good and tell them how amazing they are. And the hard ones, let them know what you want them to improve upon, because that is the only pathway forward towards a happy and joyous relationship. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today. It means the world to me that you listen and share, so please keep doing that on all of your social media platforms. Please keep doing that with people in your life that you think could benefit from hearing this message today. And please, please, please don't forget to subscribe to this podcast. You can do that on Apple Podcasts, Simplecast, Spotify, wherever it is you listen to your favorite podcast. And please support me on Patreon. You can find this podcast on Patreon and get extra benefits and bonuses when you do that. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. At its core, the ability to express your feelings is really about your voice and using your voice. And today I'm going to talk about how expressing your feelings can help you use your voice to make this world a better place. And I'm going to share an example of someone who in fact did use their voice, and as a consequence, this world is a much, much better place. So first, let me welcome you back to the aha moments, where every day I share the lessons that I've learned in my work as a psychotherapist and in my life to inspire you to live your very best life. Of course, I'm your host, Elliott Connie, and today I get to talk to you about one of my personal heroes, Nelson Mandela, who in South Africa they refer to as Madiba, which is his chief name, the name that he had from the people in his nation. You know, I've been very lucky in my travels as a lecturer and as a leader in the psychotherapy field. I've gone to many, many countries, and perhaps my favorite, the most beautiful, the most epic, the most amazing is South Africa. When I went to South Africa, first time I went, I got to visit the prison where Nelson Mandela famously spent 18 of his 27 years in prison, a place called Robben Island. I have subsequently been to his home in Soweto. I have been to what they call the capture site, which is where he was pulled over in 1963. I believe it was August 19th, 1963. I don't know why I remember that, but I think that's specifically the date. I've been to the farm where he hid when he was on the run from the South African government. And all of this was because Nelson Mandela believed that the race laws in South Africa were wrong. And he believed they were wrong to such a degree that he decided to use his voice to try to make them right. He believed they were wrong to such a degree that he would not stay quiet and simply just take it. He believed they were wrong, so he used his voice to fight them. But what I find so amazing about Nelson Mandela's journey, not just that he used his voice to make a wrong right and to verbalize that this thing was wrong, but I think what I find most epically amazing about Nelson Mandela is 27 years in prison did not quiet his voice. He got out of prison and continued to use his voice. In fact, you could even say used his voice more loudly and more prominently And I think that's the beautiful thing about learning to express your feelings is like if you really believe the thing that you're saying, and if you truly believe the feelings that you have, then nothing can quiet you. Not prison, not time, not nothing. You will just keep fighting. And as a consequence, the world became better. We have become a world that has moved away of race laws. Now, do we still have discrimination? And do we still have power and privilege dynamics that need to be addressed? Of course we do. But we now have more diversity where you can't really pass laws to make it illegal for black people or people to learn to read or to get access to public transportation. You have to honor that. And part of that is because of people like Mandela, who refused to take a wrong and continued to express their feelings in any platform available to them and make things right. One of the most beautiful things that ever happened, when I landed in South Africa, I took a train. The airport in Johannesburg is called OR Tambo Airport, and I landed in OR Tambo Airport, and I was meeting a friend in the city of Johannesburg. That's where they were going to pick me up, and I took a train into the city to this particular train station, and I got out of the train and I walked up the stairs and into the street, and I saw something that blew me away. Like when you see Africa on the news, you see a very rural, poverty-stricken version of Africa, and I'm sure that that's true, but what I saw black people in Armani suits and driving fancy sports cars and just walking down the street. And when my friend picked me up, I told them about the differences. I expected to see one thing and I saw this other. And she told me that this particular street is the most wealthy street on the continent of Africa. And I just thought to myself, number one, I thought the media doesn't show this version of Africa. I had to travel to Africa to see it. Number two, I thought about the impact of Mandela, that these black people would not have been in this circumstance had Mandela not used his voice. And I just thought it was such a powerful vision to see. I thought it was such an impactful thing that I got to see, and I'm so privileged by that. And I want to say those changes don't happen if one man does not use his voice. So imagine the power you have by using your voice in your life. So I just want to remind you, I think sometimes we have a duty to use our voices to help people who are not in a position to help themselves and express their feelings. Or we have a duty to advocate for people who have no voice sometimes in this world. Thank you so much for being here. Please continue to share this podcast on your social media platforms and with at least one person in your personal life that you think could benefit from hearing this message. Also subscribe. Don't forget to subscribe wherever it is you listen to podcasts, whether it's Apple, Spotify, Simplecast, wherever it is. And please support me on Patreon. It means the world to me. I really appreciate it. And I cannot wait to see you on Monday.